Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. What we talking about today, Claire?
Okay, so today we will talk about Terry Blair, who ended up taking the lives of 7 women in Kansas City, Missouri, mostly between 2003 and 2004. Although it's suspected he killed more, 7 are just what they're able to link him to. So we're going to start by taking a gander at his upbringing, shall we?
We shall. Did you say what time this is at? I'm afraid to ask if it was the 70s. And
Andrea,
yell at me.
I said mostly during 2003 to 2004.
Okay. I was just checking.
I don't know why you don't hear the dates. Okay, so Terry was born in 1961. He is the 4th oldest of 10 siblings.
Damn. That's a lot of
I was
kids.
waiting for that. I was like, you took longer to process that than I expected.
I was sitting here like, how many cases have we done now where there's like a gajillion kids? Like almost all of them, which doesn't bode well for my kids with them head injuries and all the children. So I don't need you to connect the dots. I'm paying attention. Okay?
Okay, well, bear this one in mind. He's going to grow up to be 6 foot tall and 209 pounds. Now, his mother suffers from mental illness and quit school in the 9th grade. So I feel like that's a contributing factor as well. You know, personally, I think this whole family is a bunch of bad seeds. A number of his family members have criminal charges, including murder. I'm going to give you the family crime highlight reel since we're discussing Terry and not the whole family sideshow. So try not to get lost.
I'll try my best.
Okay. So now there is the theory that intergenerational influence suggests that all of us are shaped by the family we grow up with. Now that can shape your decisions based on your career paths and even criminal behavior.
I believe that.
Now, Terry's mother, Janice Blair, for instance, will kill her common-law husband on August 16th, 1978. Terry is 17 years old at this time and had dropped out of high school the year prior and was sitting on his neighbor's front porch that night when he hears a gunshot coming from his house. Naturally, he scurries on home to find out, obviously there's a gunshot. He's going to go check it out. He walks in to find Elton Gray lying on the floor with blood pooling from his head. Paramedics arrive and try to revive him, while the smaller children are watching TV while they work on him. So it's just, naturally, that's got to be horrifying.
Obviously not. They couldn't miss their show. I realize this is back in the day, and they couldn't pause their show.
Bear in mind, he's the eldest, or the 4th oldest, so all the other kids, if he's 17, they are probably very small.
Of 10? He's the oldest of 10?
No. He's the 4th oldest. So he has 3 older siblings, and the rest are his younger siblings.
So it's younger siblings.
That's a lot of young kids. But they were watching TV, but he saw that one. Now, just around the corner, when paramedics are working on the dad, it's not his dad, but it's his mom's common-law husband. Yeah. Now, just around the corner, police are arresting his mother, who's outside yelling and waving the gun. She's lucky she didn't get shot, by the way.
Yeah,
but
she sure is.
She ends up entering an Alford plea for 2nd-degree murder and gets 5 years probation under the condition that she gets counseling, therapy, and psychiatric treatment.
Was there like proof that he was abusive to her, or like what? How? Why?
I think because she clearly is mentally defective.
Did they take the kids away?
No. So you've got family members right there.
What's that got to do with the price of eggs? If they put the mom in jail, the adult kids could have taken the younger ones. No, they didn't put the mom in jail because
but if they're all in the same house, it doesn't really. They're leaving them in the care of a family member.
I'm super confused, and I know you said not to get distracted on it, so I'm trying not to.
You're already getting distracted, and I only mentioned one. And again, I'm just trying to let you get an idea of what he grows up around or what he's surrounded by.
He's 17. He's already grown. Keep it moving.
God dang it, Andrea.
Oh, God dang it, me.
So we're going to move to Terry's sister, Warrenetta. Her husband, Nola White III, and another man faced charges for murdering James Bell in 1980. Now, James Bell had been stabbed 30 times. Now, Warrenetta agreed to testify against her husband in exchange for charges being dropped against her, which, by the way, is super fucked up. However, the state forbids spouses from testifying against each other, so her husband would take a plea deal for second-degree murder and receive 12 years. Now, when he gets out, he will then be murdered by his son, Warnetta's nephew, who would be arrested for murdering Nola and then get 30 years in prison. So
Good
did you get all
Lord.
that? That was a lot to swallow. When Warrenetta was 33, she would go on and kill her boyfriend in 1989, who was a drug dealer from Cuba, when he threatened to cut her off of her crack cocaine supply. So she and another male friend tied him up, gagged him. Although they would claim they didn't intend to kill him, they just wanted to tie him up and take his drugs and money. Now, her boyfriend is Pablo Gomez. Her boyfriend's body was found wrapped in a blanket on a bed in his apartment. His head was covered with a pillowcase, his hands bound with a belt, and a sponge was crammed in his mouth. He also had several small cuts on his head. Now, she would plead guilty and go to jail for second-degree murder, but she would receive a 10-year sentence and would be out in 1999.
Good Lord.
Now, just 6 months after that all happened, Terry's brother Walter allegedly killed a 16-year-old girl, Sandy Shannon, during a robbery. Now, his brother was charged with capital murder, robbery, and assault, but the case was dropped after the only eyewitness refused to testify, which has got
Hey,
to be super frustrating.
yeah. So are these his older siblings or just his siblings in general?
His siblings. Like, we've got older, younger.
Yeah, but you don't know which is which. Because I was going to say, perhaps they should have done thrown them all away, locked up that key. Because turns out, if you leave a murderer to raise them their children, turns out they all turn into criminals.
Well, it's just like, I feel like with her, the mother having mental illness, they've all got some in them too. And then just having just no good influence around them.
Does she have mental illness or is she just cranky?
So I would assume, since she got a 5 years probation to get treatment and everything, that she clearly is a nut job. No. So he doesn't go to jail for killing that 16-year-old girl. A
Of
few
course
months
not.
later, Walter goes and abducts and shoots and kills a 21-year-old Catherine Jo Allen. Now, Walter would claim that Catherine was the alleged victim in a rape case and that he was paid $6,000 to kill her, so that way she couldn't testify against whoever raped her, which was, I feel like, probably did happen. Now, he would confess to murdering her, but then recant it. He was convicted of capital murder and executed in July of 1993 at the age of 32. Now, don't get lost in this crazy family tree, because we're not even done there. Terry's older brother Clifford would abduct a woman in 1992, force her to perform oral sex at an abandoned house, then proceed to beat her unconscious. His victim would be hospitalized for more than 8 weeks. She was shot in the arm, had a fractured skull, a broken jaw, and smashed cheekbones.
Did she bite his pee-pee? Is that why he's
I
beat her
hope
up?
she did, but
I
her
sure
arm,
hope she did.
dude, her arm was so badly damaged that she had to get a bone in her arm replaced with metal.
Jeez Louise.
Now, he was convicted of forcible sodomy, assault, kidnapping, and armed criminal actions. He got 2 life terms plus 240 years.
But I sure hope that he forced the oral before he sodomized her, not after. Because that would be shitty.
Ew. So, forced sodomy, when I looked it up before, it's just forcing something in somewhere. So, it can be anal, it can be
I thought all
oral.
sodomy was anal.
Uh-uh. I thought so too, but if you look it up, the law definition is just to be sodomized is basically it is something shoved where it shouldn't be. Now, another of Terry's brothers, it was Daniel. He would plead guilty in 1999 to federal drug charges for dealing crack. It had to have been a shit ton because he gets 8 years. Now, one of Terry's
Jeez.
younger brothers was 16 years old in 1991 when he gets arrested for first-degree robbery and is sentenced to 15 years, which I think is pretty serious for a 16-year-old. He gets out in the end of 2003, but would go on a crime spree from December 2003 to the end of January 2004, resulting in him facing 88 charges of a robbery, assault, and armed criminal actions. When he he was robbing bars and other businesses. He ends up pistol whipping like employees and patrons while he's doing that, which is why he gets so many charges. He would plead guilty and he goes back to jail. So it doesn't even stop there. This goes all the way down the family line, and even his 2 nephews would go to jail for kidnapping, robbery, and forcible sodomy as teenagers. Then they'd be released after 2 years in prison to go on and kill someone during an armed robbery, and then end up going back to jail for life plus 50 years.
Good
So
Lord.
that's the family highlight reel. Basically, they only know how to do family reunions in prison.
So I lost track, but how many of them did they? So you got mom, but how many of the kids ended up with a criminal record that you just listed? A lot, but
8.
that's insane. Plus him? Did one of them die? Is that why he's not a
I don't
criminal?
know. Maybe there was only one good one out of there. But so that's not all of his siblings. That's the nephews, the cousin, or not the cousins, the nephews and his siblings, and then his mom. But it's still, I feel like that's a lot of crime in one family.
That's a fuck ton of crime in one family.
Yes. Now, back to Terry. As you can see, he was basically raised on the wrong side of the law. Now, in 1982, he would be found guilty for second-degree murder in the death of Angela Monroe. She's the mother of 2 of his children and was also 7 months pregnant at the time.
What the heck?
Now, Terry at this point is 20 years old when he's arrested for Angela's death. Now, he would claim he was angry with Angela because she was continuing to work as a prostitute and ended up beating her to death. Now, she worked part-time at Captain D's. What? Did I not give you time to process that? It's
Okay,
not right,
so
Andrea. Because when I was reading it, I did so I can get behind him being upset.
oh my gosh. My
So
brain is spinning here. So I agree she should not be working as a prostitute, and I don't know what Captain D's is, but to say she's a
it's a C.
prostitute working at Captain D's is super funny.
So
And if you're
Captain
about to
D's
say it's a
is like
seafood place, that's
it
even
sure
more hilarious.
it sure fucking is, Andrea.
She's serving the clams, huh?
No, it's oysters. But anyway, so I don't know that she was indeed a prostitute. It's possible he made that shit up, but it's also possible she was a prostitute. I don't know. But she's just 19 years old when she's killed. Police would find her after Terry would call 911 to tell them where her body was. Now, they'll find her body behind a building with extensive head injuries. Now, initially, he'll blame her death on another man who he said was angry at Angela because she was talking to Terry instead of turning tricks, kind of making it seem like his pimp or her pimp did it.
Of
Now,
course.
then Terry would tell police that he tried to confront her about the prostituting because he wasn't getting any money from her, which I was like, that's why he's mad. So she tried to run away from him, and he in turn grabbed her and beat her over the head with a tree limb. Now, he would recant his confession, but would be convicted of her murder. He's going to be sentenced to 25 years, so I guess the jury also felt like if he wanted his
He done
girlfriend
dated.
yeah, if he wanted his girlfriend and mother of his soon to be third child to stop prostituting, and she wouldn't, that they got behind him being rage murdery. Now, he is released on parole after serving 21 years.
Jeez.
Now, the
He
Missouri
served a lot.
board, yeah, the majority of his sentence, he was shy of 4
Yeah,
years. Now,
that's insane.
the Missouri Board of Probation and Parole denied Terry parole 7 times in the 1990s.
Did it say why? It doesn't matter. I'm just curious. Like, was he getting in trouble in jail or
It's literally my
prison?
next sentence, so hold your panties. Now, he was bounced from prison to prison, getting into trouble regularly, and even accumulated 67 conduct violations, including fighting, assault, disobeying orders, possession of contraband, and being in a restricted area. As crazy as that is, the average prisoner accumulates 4 charges a year, and he was below that threshold.
Oh my gosh. No. That is insane. So
I know.
when they get out on good behavior, they're like, "Oh, they
They're
only
below
racked
the
up
threshold.
3."
Yeah. Because I was just like,
That's
my eye
insane.
twitched. So my guess would be if they expected them to behave fully, they'd never let them go. Which I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. But then we already have an overpopulation prison situation happening. That's what I'm saying. If we didn't have like the thousands of people on death row, then we wouldn't have such an overpopulation.
We need us an island. I'm back to that. Ship them all to the island. You done murder people because you're being stupid? You go to the island. You done offend children in any way, shape, or form? You get sent to the island.
Did you say offend?
Yeah, any
Because
type of
what if you?
offense.
Oh, I was going to say, because if you just offend a small child and they have the power to banish you to the island, that seems a little extreme.
No, I mean anything inappropriate abuse wise with a child. You deserve to be shipped to the island. Because I feel like if the children's are not being abused, they tend to be raised a little bit more on the correct side of things, and you don't end up with a bunch of this. But
Yeah,
then again, you can raise them right and they still become criminals, in which case you send them to the island too.
I'm just going to tell you. He's first released in May 2002 on a conditional release to allow him to adjust to life outside prison. He would make it all of 2 months before testing positive for marijuana, and they sent his ass right back to prison in August 2002. He would be released again at the end of January
Ooh,
and
that's a long
disappear
time.
from August to January.
For just weed? Yeah. We've
I
literally
didn't hear
seen
that.
these guys that are out on like where they're out on probation or parole or whatever, and they get like breaking and entering charges and only go to jail for like 6 months. So for him to have gone to jail for several months, I thought you were going to say like 30 days, which I realize that's whatever, but
It was
continue.
5 months. He goes back to jail for 5 months.
For on a marijuana charge.
Well,
Like
he should have gone back the rest of his couple years. But
I'm
so
not arguing that. I'm just saying.
he returns to jail in August. He's released again January, and he disappears July 7th, 2003. Now, it is notated on July 6th, one of Terry's relatives was served a summons for eviction proceedings at her residence, and it's notated that a roommate named Terry Blair received the notice. Now, when efforts were made to determine where Terry was when he went missing, the relative refused to talk and said she didn't have a roommate, nor would she talk about her family. That was when the news inquired.
Interesting.
So I'm going to give you some dates here. I know you're not going to remember them, but he does things fairly quickly. Now I'm also going to tell you the rape victims' names are kept as initials, so I don't have names of surviving victims.
That's fine. We'll respect their privacy.
So May 13th, 2003, victim AS is raped. June 30th, 2003, Sandra Reed is 45. Her body is found with a broken neck and strangled. She had 9 convictions for soliciting for immoral purposes between 1975 and 2003, trespassing, drug possession, and prostitution charges.
I like that one charge, by the way.
Immoral
Immoral.
purposes. I feel like that isn't a Missouri charge. I would expect that in Alabama.
It's neighbor.
I feel like that's what when you get caught just on the corner thumbing it, and They can't actually say you were prostituting, but they're pretty suspicious whatever you were up to was of an immoral nature. But how that you
They're
get
like
that to stick, I don't know.
they're like, "You ain't looking for a real husband."
You were batting them dick sucking eyeballs. Sorry. And you had your change purse out.
Ew.
That is not
Anyway,
what I was
continue.
talking about, just so we're clear. Do not get
Oh.
that. I didn't say prison purse. I said your change. Like a little tiny wallet.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Anyway, her body was found June 30th.
That's
So,
sad.
yeah.
And
Now,
just to clarify for anybody we might have just offended, I was laughing at the charge, not the victim.
right. Now, bear in mind, that all happens that June, when her body is found June 30th, 2003. He goes missing July 7th, 2003. So that's when, I mean, obviously at this point, they don't know he's done the rape and murdered Sandra Reed. But then he goes on, I guess he lays low, or my guess would be there's other victims and they just don't know about it. Because as we've seen, they don't just typically go quiet.
No. Is
So then,
he like out of the country in a different state? Like
no,
they just
he
don't know where
doesn't.
he is?
No, he stays put. He's just whatever shenanigans, they don't, they have nothing to tie him to. And you'll see why in a second. Now, not a second, but you'll see.
Hurry up.
Now, June 1st, the next year, so we're in 2004, victim JS is raped. Then June 6th, victim LL is raped. July 14th, 2004, Anna Ewing is 42. Her body's found. She died of a broken neck and strangulation.
That's her
No,
history, yeah.
yeah. Sheila has a broken neck, but both were strangled. Now, the way the bodies were on top of each other when they were found indicated that they had been thrown in the garage window. Like they were just chunked through there and they were just body on top of body.
That's awful.
Now, Sheila had 2 teenage sons, 18 and 19, and she too had a criminal history that included drug possession.
Is he like putting out an ad for people with a criminal history?
I
Does
feel
he
like
think
this
they're just
is,
not going to be found, or is it just in the area that he's finding them? Like,
I
what
feel
is
like,
he?
yeah, I feel like prostitutes and runaways are easy pickings because it makes it hard for police to figure out when they went missing, who I mean, you live a dangerous lifestyle, a wrong decision, and you're dead.
Yeah, it's so sad, especially
It
for all these
is.
kids.
And what's sadder is I can tell you, when the public hears that a prostitute's body is found, nobody is upset. Nobody, there's no uproar. There's no let's find them. It's just like, oh well.
Yeah, because they're taking the same, like kind of like what you just said. They live a dangerous lifestyle. That was their choice, and if something happens to them, oh well. Which is still super messed up. And I feel really bad for all these kids that are basically being orphaned. Because I'm assuming these prostitutes don't have husbands and fathers that are actively involved with their children.
I would guess not. Now,
Just
Patricia had a daughter and 3 grandchildren that she left behind. Now, she had recently completed a drug recovery program. Now, DNA is collected on Sheila and processed. The next 2 days, an anonymous caller placed 2 phone calls to 911 less than 24 hours apart, saying that he killed 2 women and directed the police to find their bodies. Now, the caller also told him where to find the next 3. And he also stated that they were all prostitutes and he killed them, and that's why he killed them. He called them scum.
he's disgusting. He's not the next Jack the Ripper. Let's face
Right.
it. You're putting your Pepe where it don't belong, and you don't get to go around murdering people.
Yeah. Now, September 3rd, 2004, Carmen Hung, 40, was found strangled behind a vacant house. Now, she had disappeared in June, but her body wasn't found until September because of that 911 call. Now, she too had a criminal history that included possession charges. Now, mind you, that her body wasn't found, or it wouldn't have been found, in my opinion, without him calling and saying where her body was. So I think if they weren't going to find that body, I feel like the bodies in between when there was almost a year of him not doing anything. I feel like that's where the victims that you have missing people, but they never found their bodies. And I really am surprised at that because I wouldn't think in a city you'd just leave a body in an alley and no one reports that.
Yeah.
But that leads us to the next day, which is September 4th, when Darcy Williams, who's 25, was found with a broken neck and strangled. She too was found in an alley. Now, Claudette Janelle was 31. She was also found with a broken neck and strangled. Now, she was found in a partially wooded area behind a building. Now, she was Terry's youngest victim, Darcy, that is, and had
How old was
criminal
she?
charges. She was 25.
Okay.
Now, she had criminal charges for drug possession from just that July, and she was on probation for 2 years at the time of her death. Now, police
Man,
had their work
he's
cut out for them because they really had no real leads, and just identifying the women was a struggle. They also had constant phone calls reporting women missing with ties to that area, but some of the bodies were so decomposed because you're talking the summer. It made it difficult to figure out who they were. Let that
so
sink in. 2,000 is a
what
lot of fucking people, in my opinion.
okay. I can't wrap my head around this. If
I
you
was
have
horrified.
Yeah,
Horrified.
that's awful. Like okay, so you have violent offenders that you're not checking in with and you're not reporting as
Now,
or
I
I
don't
guess
know
they
what
are
the.
reporting it
No,
if
no,
they're
no, no, no.
missing, but
Yeah. So I don't know what the 2,000, what all the charges were. I'm just saying 9 of that, which I realize is a small amount of that 2,000, but 9 would be including Terry of people who have done serious things and they don't know where they are.
what I'm saying is 2,000, some of which are violent offenders, and you can't keep tabs on them. That
So
doesn't
my guess would be they put it in as they've got a warrant and they expect, since they are not rule followers, that they'll eventually run into a police officer and that's how they're going to catch them, because to try to chase down that many people, they don't have the manpower.
I
So they
think
just
they
wait
need
for
ankle
that ugly
bracelets.
penny. They just wait for that ugly penny to turn up.
I still don't never heard anybody else say that except you, but keeping it moving, I think that again, with my very opinionated statements here, I think violent offenders should all have to wear ankle monitors. And I realize there's ways to get that shit off, but at least it gives you something to go off of. If we're not going to go with this whole put a GPS in their in their body somehow,
No, no. I say screw their ankle. They wear dog collars.
right? Where if they try to get it off, they done,
Get
oh,
electrocuted.
like, yeah, just
Now, the State Department of Corrections spokesperson would state that early release is built in for all inmates. Now, this gives the parole board the opportunities to supervise offenders for the remainder of their sentence, because if they were to serve their entire sentence, they would have no supervisory authority over them. To which I'm
I
like,
call
then build that
mm,
into the law that even if you serve your whole sentence, you are required for the next, I don't know, half of whatever you served to be on probation. If that's the rest of your life, guess what? It sucks for you.
shouldn't have done what you did. But here's the thing is okay, so if a felon loses their right to vote and loses their right to like carry guns and like they lose their rights even after they've served their sentence, that shit's not like reinstated to them. They don't magically get those back. They can ask to have them reinstated, and that can also be denied. But if they lose all of those other rights, why do they lose their right to not be supervised? Like,
So
did I say that right?
I
Like,
I agree with you. I agree with the points you're making. However, I think by taking away like the right to vote and have a firearm, those situations, that doesn't require anybody to actively supervise them or check in. And I feel like if they can't chase down people who don't bother to come in, that it's easier to take somebody's rights away and that's a done thing than it is to have somebody monitoring someone.
Yeah, I get that. But if the whole excuse for letting them out early is so that they have the excuse to monitor them, then I say it's a stupid law that just needs a little wiggle room written in there, because if they've already lost their right, then it wouldn't take much to be like, yeah, so you couldn't behave in prison. So we let you out a couple years early just so we can keep tabs on you because we don't think you're going to be a good boy. No, he's already got his rights stripped of him. How hard would it be to be like, yeah, so he's not behaving in prison. He doesn't have his rights. This one we need to keep tabs on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, versus the guy that accidentally causes a car accident and goes to jail for manslaughter, which is still awful for the victims, and I'm sure is awful for the person that caused the accident to have to deal with. But if they learn their lesson, they behave themselves in prison, and then they get out and want to be an active, productive member of society, obviously that's somebody that doesn't need to continue to be supervised. But somebody that's exceeding their 4 violations a year, um, I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult to be like, yeah, so let's go ahead and red flag this fucker. He can serve his whole sentence and be supervised when his ass gets out.
I knew you'd like my sidetrack.
Yeah, you got my
Get you
brain
all
all riled up.
riled. No, I can
Sure
feel
did.
it. Damn.
Congratulations.
Well, that's
Trying
the
to keep
first
my
time.
opinions to myself, but I done can't do it. I am opinionated.
Well, no, when I read it, I did the same thing of, wait, if they're going to use the excuse, it's built into the system to allow for supervision. And I get the whole, if that's your sentence, once you do your time, that's it. However, then make the stipulation, this is how much jail time, this is how much probation.
And if you don't want probation and you served your whole jail time,
Then here's the thought, don't do the murderings.
here's your punishment. If you're forced to serve your entire sentence because you couldn't behave, your ass is going to be monitored.
Or in the Claire world, you'll be put down.
Yeah,
3
I like that world.
strikes.
At least in my world, by the way, they get shipped to an island. They get themselves a permanent vacation.
Hey,
and they can learn to.
I want the island for myself.
Well, see, then you
They
get
don't
into the
deserve a
nitty-gritty
permanent
of.
vacation.
Well, but then you get into the nitty-gritty of, would you want Dave to come with you
That's why I
to your
said I want the
island?
island for myself. I get to choose what happens on my island.
Yeah, so turns out I feel like lots of people would want that option. Just be easier, send them criminals to go forage for themselves. If they choose to kill each other, so be it. Anyway.
Yeah, we sidetracked far longer on that one than I thought. But I did pencil it in as a sidetrack. So he's arrested,
Sidetrack
right?
it was, and I am all kinds of riled up, so let's keep it moving.
Okay, so he's arrested, right? Now, police are curious because since when they look into him and find out that he's on parole for murdering his prostitute girlfriend, they're like, Now, that one body, that Miss Sheila that they found, was kind of near where he lives, so they decide to ask him if he knows her, since he lived in the area and all. So they show her a picture, and he says he doesn't know her, never seen her before. Well, they decide to do the whole, well, we collected DNA, so you won't mind if we swab you, huh? So 4 days later, Terry is charged with Sheila McKenzie's murder because the DNA found on and in Sheila matched to Terry.
Did he voluntarily give up his DNA?
He's probably stupid. I don't know if they voluntarily did it. However, whatever. Well, wouldn't they have it on file, rather, since he's already gone to jail for murder?
I don't know. You would think.
I don't know, Andrea. It just says the DNA found on and in Sheila matched Terry, so he can't say he never knew her, never saw her before. Your penis did.
I was going to say, he could say he wasn't looking at her face.
So part of me was kind of curious if he was killing all these prostitutes because he didn't have any money.
That's a real fucked up way to get out of paying your tab.
It made me think of Grand Theft Auto. You ever seen that game where you can sleep with a prostitute and then you kill her and then you get your money back?
I sure haven't. I've been living under a rock over here in these there parts.
Yeah, well, I remember watching somebody else play and be like, what? You can what? Like, that's how you get your money back. And I'm like,
I went downstairs and Jason was playing that game with our teenager, and they were in a strip club, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And then they started like killing people and like and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, this game
Yeah.
don't seem very appropriate.
Well, anywho, so he's in jail, and then they find another body. Neela Harris, 33, also died of a broken neck and strangulation, recovered in an alley.
Wait, he was in jail?
Well, they found the body.
Oh,
So, not, so
how long was
they
the
don't
body
find
there?
any. I don't know, Andrea. But
I feel like it's a valid question. Don't you get all growly with me?
so all the bodies they find, with the exception of when they find Sheila, which is one of hers, is the only one that they end up with DNA on. Is part of the issue is the decomposed state the other bodies are in makes it hard to really. They're rotted. There's not a whole lot. They're just
Gotcha.
mush. It's in the summer, like, which also made identifying hard because you can't tell what they look like. Because I know you might not remember from the scarring of that case that I did with Felix Hall that the bugs really like the tasty eyeballs and your tongue and all of that.
Uh,
So when your lips are gone and your eyeballs are gone and everything's peeling back because of the heat,
all right. I gotcha. No
and
more
you turn
details needed.
juicy and the
Did you
bugs
get
and
triggers at the beginning of this one? I'm just curious because I
your
don't feel
trigger
like I
is
did.
it's Claire's case.
I don't feel like I'm pretty sure you didn't give triggers at
I
all,
didn't. I didn't.
but I feel
I
like if you're
didn't
gonna
get
get
it
into
at
the
all.
details of what a corpse's process is in the heat, that is a trigger of, hey, put your snack down, feller, because this is gonna get kind of disgusting.
I'll
Because you
put
got
it a
me sitting
different
here
way then.
as you were like talking about the lips disappearing, I curled my lips in, and then you talked about their eyeballs going out. I had my eyeballs squeezed shut, and then you're talking about flesh rolling, and I'm like, okay, this is that. I'm
So
good.
then
I get it.
put
It's
you a
gross.
piece.
It was been rotting for a while.
So
I was just asking.
put you a peach in a mason jar with a couple holes in the
No,
top of it and put it
no,
out in the
ma'am.
full sun in the middle of the
I will
heat and
not.
watch the juices and the skin peel off
No,
of it and the bugs that go all over it. That's
hard
just a
pass
little,
for me.
and that
Gross.
wouldn't even be part of the smell. Anyway, so
Again, I
this
say a hard pass.
so December 3rd, 2004, Terry is indicted in more murders and assaults. He's 42. So you know how that DNA left on and in Sheila matched to Terry? Turns
Mm-hmm.
out turns out there was saliva that matched another man that the defense would later use to argue that Terry was not the only possible suspect. There were also other unknown hairs and DNA on other victims. So they try
Okay,
to
but
use
if they were
that.
known prostitutes, like, I
Yeah.
feel like it was already a stretch at that point. And quite frankly, unless they found, like, I don't even know how they could prove that he did it.
So
Because
that was
just
the
because his DNA is
struggle.
found in her and on her, unless there were, like, defensive wounds
So that's what the
with,
decomposition issue is. It makes it hard to say if there was any.
because I feel like just an idiot attorney would be able to be like, yeah, so she's a known prostitute. And my client, at the most that you can prove, had sex with a prostitute.
Well, it doesn't help that he was like, no, never seen her before. And he clearly had sex with her. If he would have just been like, yeah, do her a lot every Thursday, they probably have been like, ah, crap. But he opted
Yeah.
to try to do the lying, which made it suspicious. Now, by the
But as an
time,
attorney point of view, they could be like, he was just afraid of catching a charge for solicitation.
yeah, and going back to jail. Well, he was already
Mm-hmm.
going to go back. But anyway, so by the time the 5 bodies were found, they're too badly decomposed to determine how they died beyond being murder victims. Now, they ruled them as homicide since someone tried to hide the bodies.
Makes
Now,
sense.
that's the bodies of all 6 women were found in areas of Kansas City that were frequented by drug dealers and prostitutes. 911 calls would be referenced as coming in from Terry had family members in the vicinity. Unfortunately, they were unable to locate exact addresses. Now, they did have police officers go near the addresses and do like a phone call to see which towers it pinged on. However, sometimes it would ping off the same tower, sometimes it would do a different one. So it wasn't a real guarantee of Terry made that phone call from that spot. Now, Cherry Chadbourne would testify about how she worked as a prostitute and Terry had been one of her clients after he got out of prison in 1982. Which, can I also say, I didn't realize prostitutes did their thing for 30 plus years.
No, didn't know that either.
Now, she grew to fear Terry, and Cherry would recall a time in 2004 when she flagged down police and told them that Terry had just gone on a tangent about how he was going to start killing prostitutes one by one. Now, I imagine police didn't give a shit when she flagged down. They probably were like, okay. He's probably tired of living in a whorehouse, pretty much. Now,
how about the police were like, well, we can always book you since you're admitting to possibly being a prostitute.
Yeah. Now, during cross-examination, though, Cherry would admit that she had been spun, which meant she had been awake for days, high on crack cocaine, and that her memory of that time was flawed. Which, by the way, had never heard that before.
No, I've never heard that either. Yeah.
I had to look it up. Now, Latrice Leisure would testify that she called the police to her house on September 10th, 2004. At the time, her and Terry were watching football when the news popped up with a picture of Terry as a person of interest in connection to several murders. Now, she and Terry both pretended not to notice, and eventually she'd ask Terry. I know. I just picture them sitting on the couch as like...
I would straight up, why was your face on the news for what? You got some explaining to do here. Which, by the way, the prosecution's case must be super, super struggling that they have a known drug user that is a prostitute testifying that she was high, spun, and has bad recollections of those in their times of her solicitation and whatever. That's their case. Like,
I'm getting to it.
Go faster.
But keep in mind, he's not related to the best people anyhow, and if you live in that part of town, your witnesses are going to be people who are prostitutes, drug dealers, or the like. Now, so her and Terry are watching TV. They pretend not to see that shit on TV. So she would ask him to leave. I feel like it's one of those, okay, well, I'm going to go take a shower and go to sleep now. You better get on now and get. But she would watch him walk down the street before calling the police. Then she heard her dog barking out back and panicked that maybe Terry doubled back. She even told the police that she thought Terry had come back and was in the back of her house. Now, police get there and find Terry hiding behind the detached garage. So I'm just glad she didn't go out there looking.
Yeah, smart move, lady.
And
turns out you might have been a body.
She's the reason they get Terry. Like, you figure they didn't know where he was holding up. So when she called and said where, he was just here, and they go to her house because she thinks he's in the backyard, that's the reason they're able to arrest him or able to locate him and arrest him. And they just use the parole violation as he's in custody.
Yeah. Good job on her. It turns out her pretending she didn't notice that he was wanted or in suspicion, like on the TV. Turns out that saved her life.
Yeah, and he just went walking down the street processing, and he's like, you know what, I should circle back and kill her. So I bet that's what he was going to do if he was going to be all hiding and sneaking. What was the motivation otherwise to be hiding behind the detached garage? He was waiting for her to walk out.
Yeah.
She would also
way to be a survivor.
She would also testify that the 911 tapes, some of them sounded like Terry, some didn't because the voice was disguised.
How is it disguised?
I don't know. Maybe he
like we do, where we talk kind of funny.
I don't know, but I think it was just one of those
funny.
You have severe issues. But I just am glad she decided to testify because
Hold up.
had
I
she
don't have severe issues. These people have severe issues. I was just changing my voice.
anyway, so I feel like just had a brain fart, you jackass. But oh, that's what I was
You're
gonna say.
welcome.
So I feel like it's a good thing she stuck to her guns to testify, because if she wouldn't have testified, it'd be like some of his relatives, where if somebody doesn't want to testify, then their case kind of shrivels up. But she identifies the 911 voice, and that one also happens to be like, hey, I murdered these people. Here's where the bodies are that you haven't found in the last few months. Now, her daughter, we're talking about Cherry or Latrice, his daughter, was 18, and would also testify that Terry had told her, when referencing the prostitutes that had been killed, that whoever did it must have had a good reason.
No.
Now, Irene Williams, the mother of Darcy Williams, testified that she dropped her daughter off near where Terry lived. She recalled asking her daughter if she was sure she wanted her to be dropped off there because it looked like a rough part of town and felt unsafe. Her daughter replied it'd be all right because she was meeting a friend. She then watched her daughter walk toward 3 men standing in an alley, one of which was Terry. That was the last time she saw or spoke to her daughter.
That's sad.
Now, as part of a judge, or not, as part of a deal for a judge-tried case, prosecutors dropped the death penalty and dismissed charges against Terry and 2 of the murders, Sandra Reed and Neela Harris. They also dropped 3 rapes and an assault, a total of 6 women that will not have justice for what he did to them because they didn't have evidence.
That's messed up.
It is. Now, on that devastating note, I'll bring you back to a good side of that he is found guilty. He would have his head lowered when he heard that he's found guilty, and his family would cry and hug in the gallery.
Oh, he's going to go have him a family reunion in prison.
Now, I did the whole, his family cried, really? You're all criminals. You were surprised that he's going to prison? He's practically lived there his whole life. It would have saved time if they just put him in there from when he started walking.
Pretty much.
Now, he would be sentenced to life without parole, and he would be found guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder. He is currently rotting in a Missouri correctional facility. And that is the story of Terry Blair and his fucked up family.
Yeah. His family's a case all on its own.
That's what I said. When I first started doing it, I was like, what? 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 Everybody's murdering everybody. And I'm going to do our PSA of stay in school. This is what happens when you have no goals in life and you drop out of high school. You become a criminal piece of shit and don't add any good to society.
Yep.
And killing prostitutes is not okay.
I feel bad for a lot of these people, mainly because, like, what happened to all these kids? That's a lot of kids that were left with no one. Or
I feel
would
like
assume
you could do some research, and I feel like they also add to the story of crime because they're just tossed into another bad situation, and it's a lot of
so
kids.
messed up.
It's a lot of kids. That's why I said the more I researched, the more it branched out, and it was devastating to just see the ripples of a fucked up family.
All the lives that he affected by killing all of those women, there's so many children that ended up with no one. I hope that they have a grandparent or somebody, but not to be the asshole here. But if their parent grew up and turned out not so great, there's a really good chance that the grandparents had a hand in that. I realize people can get addicted to drugs and take the wrong turn, and there's not much a family member can do. But looking at his family, hopefully a lot of those kids, if not all of those kids, had somebody that was a good support system for them, because that's just heartbreaking. And I know there's no way to know what happened to all of them or really any of them because they were all minors, but it's just so sad to sit and think about how many kids that is.
Yeah. Now, I feel like a lot of prostitutes are, like, part of the reason it's hard to identify them is they're not in contact with their family anymore. And a lot of that does stem from you go down the drug path you end up cutting off the people who want you to quit it because you're not ready to do that yet. So you cut out the people who are telling you you're a piece of shit kind of situations, which also makes it hard for them to be reported missing if they're not talking to anybody who would notice they're missing.
Yeah.
And then on that side of things, that chances are a lot of these kids, they don't know who the dads are because they're prostituting. So they don't have that one. And I would say at that rate, if they don't identify a prostitute and she's got kids, they might not know who the grandparent is.
Other than mom's family.
If she was identified.
Yeah.
Because there is one body in this that they don't say much about, but that was found but was so badly decomposed, they never identify her. There's nothing to identify her.
Yeah, we don't know if she has kids, though.
Right. You don't know that she does.
Well, then her kids would have been left home alone and eventually found by something or someone.
Maybe another prostitute. Maybe a pedophile. You don't know.
I'm just saying. I'm leaving it on that note.
Yeah, I'm just...
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind-fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.